Let's talk cake, because probably the number one concern I hear from clients when they first start working with me because they have prediabetes is whether or not they're ever going to be able to have desserts again. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can occasionally enjoy cake without spiking your blood sugar. I personally tested 3 ways to prevent an excessive blood sugar spike when eating a piece of birthday cake. Be sure you watch this video all the way to the end because it contains 3 different approaches and common questions that you might have. Now look, if you have prediabetes, you don't want to make a habit of eating super refined and processed foods like cake. Besides the blood sugar issues, desserts are low nutrient foods. And I know that there are a lot of well-known YouTubers out there that say you need to completely omit all sugars and grains from your diet. But as a holistic nutritionist who's been working with folks with prediabetes for over a decade now, I find that extreme dietary approaches do not work 99% of the time. I would rather give you some tools so that you can occasionally enjoy a treat. A sustainable approach is a good long-term strategy for metabolic health. So here's what I did. I tested 3 well-known approaches to preventing an excessive blood sugar spike. Psyllium fiber, a popular brand being Metamucil, apple cider vinegar, and berberine, a plant compound in supplement form. On 4 separate days at the same time each day, I consumed a piece of cake. Yes, this was a fun video to make. Each piece was 75 grams of carbohydrates. Now, as someone with insulin resistance, I can normally consume about 20 grams of carbs without an excessive spike. That's my carbohydrate tolerance level. So 75 grams of carbs is far outside my limit. I ate the cake at the same time each day, and I ate no other foods along with it. I then tracked my glucose level with a Dexcom Stelo over-the-counter continuous glucose monitor and noted the effects after about 2 hours. A CGM was critical to doing tests like these so that I could see exactly how the cake affected my glucose. Each person's reaction is different. If you're interested in trying out a CGM, check out my CGM Jumpstart course, which is a fast and easy way to get started. Info's down below. So first, the control test. I consumed a piece of cake with no spike prevention in place. And boy, oh boy, did my glucose level spike. Within a couple of hours, my glucose shot up to 187 milligrams per deciliter. Now, the range that your glucose should be within for someone who does not have diabetes is 70 to 140 milligrams per deciliter. So my glucose spiked way beyond the upper limit. The next day, I did test number 1, psyllium fiber. Here I am eating my cake on day 1. But before I ate, I took 2 teaspoons of psyllium fiber in a glass of water. Psyllium fiber is a soluble fiber and is known to slow down digestion so that the effect of glucose is spread out and there's no major spike. So this test was actually a huge flop for me. Here's what my glucose did after a couple of hours. The psyllium fiber really didn't do anything to help me. It peaked at about the same value as I had in the control test, 186 milligrams per deciliter. So this was a big disappointment, and I also got a wicked case of reactive hypoglycemia after the test, which is common after an excessive glucose spike. So I moved on to test number 2, apple cider vinegar. Here I am again, eating my cake. Tough job, but somebody had to do it. And before this little feast, I took 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar in a glass of water. And I just drank it right before I ate the cake. And this time, the results were better. Here's what my glucose did after a couple of hours. The apple cider vinegar kept me just at the upper limit of 140 milligrams per deciliter, which I still consider that a success since it kept me within the recommended range. And then lastly, I did test number 3, berberine. For those of you unfamiliar with berberine, it's a compound extracted from plants such as barberry, golden seal, and tree turmeric. It's known to help with blood sugar balance, with some clinical studies even suggesting that it's as good as metformin, which is a prescription drug commonly used to manage blood sugar. As with any supplement, you should always check with your doctor before trying. So here I am yet again, eating my cake, but only after taking 500 milligrams of berberine. Again, I took it just before I ate the cake. Specifically, I took the Vital Nutrients brand, which I've taken before. And this test was definitely the best results. My glucose level topped out at 102 milligrams per deciliter after a couple of hours. So this was by far the best outcome of the 3 tests. Even before these tests, I've found berberine to be really helpful in managing blood sugar. I even keep a couple of capsules in a small container in my purse so that I have it on hand if I end up in a situation where I know I'm going to consume more carbs than normal. So here are the test results side by side so you can see exactly how each preventative measure performed for me. The most important thing to note about these tests is that this was my experience with my level of insulin resistance. Your results may be different as we each have a unique metabolic system. I feel like all 3 tests, psyllium fiber, apple cider vinegar, and berberine, are worth doing to see what measure works best for you. Another important note here is that I did these tests in the most extreme way, in that I consumed the cake without any other food. I wanted to do that to keep variables to a minimum. But it also meant that my body got a direct shot of 75 grams of very refined carbohydrates. This makes glucose levels really shoot up quickly. In fact, just to highlight this point, I did one final test where I tried the psyllium fiber again, but I first ate the cake after eating a meal with a decent amount of protein and a side of vegetables. And when I did that test, the results were different. Better. My glucose peaked at 110, which is well below the upper limit of 140 milligrams per deciliter. Much better, right? So that shows how helpful it is to consume high carbohydrate foods after a meal with protein. The other 2 measures, the apple cider vinegar and the berberine, will most likely also work better if you eat a protein-packed meal before eating the cake. Now, I want to spend just a couple of minutes anticipating a few questions that you might have when watching this. Question number 1. If berberine works so well at preventing blood sugar spikes, why not just take it all the time? And the answer is some people do. It's something you'd want to discuss with your doctor, but many people do feel it's a great alternative to metformin. The only downside that I've seen in clients is that taking it consistently can sometimes cause a stomach upset, whereas just taking it occasionally doesn't seem to pose a problem. Question number 2. Why should I worry about preventing an occasional excessive spike? I can just enjoy a piece of cake every once in a while. The answer here is that every spike counts. Every time your glucose level goes above the recommended range, you're contributing to excess glucose in your cells and increasing the body's resistance to the effect of insulin. Resistance occurs with repeated exposure to excess glucose. So if it's an easy thing to just take a quick preventative measure, why not do it? I highly recommend it. Question number 3. How do I know which method will work the best for me? And the answer here is, rather than guessing, it's really best to use a blood sugar tracking tool like an over-the-counter CGM so that you can see exactly how your body responds to the food and to the preventative measure. I could not have done these tests without using my CGM as a gauge to see how effective each measure was. As I mentioned earlier, I used a Dexcom Stelo over-the-counter CGM, but if you want to get more info on which CGM is the right fit for you, check out my video that compares the Dexcom Stelo and Abbott Lingo CGMs right there. If this video has been helpful, I'd sure appreciate a like and comments. It really helps more people see this information. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.